Welcome, everyone. We're talking with Mary Ellen Daly O'Brien, longtime city councilor for the city of Haverhill, running for re-election. Welcome to the program, Mary.
Thank you very much, Frank. It's always a pleasure to be here every year or every other year.
Well, great to have you, even in between years.
Yes, in between is fine too.
Okay, if you could give us a little bit about your history relative to the council.
Well, this will be my 8th election. I've really enjoyed being on the council, and I enjoy the camaraderie of the council and the fact that we work so closely together. I have not served on a council that hasn't been a cooperative group of people. And the rest of my life, I'm a nurse. I'm a nurse of over 40 years. I hate to say when I graduated from college. I have 4 daughters that are all grown. The last one just got out of college. And when I first ran, she was 7 years old. I mean, and my children...
So you do have a history.
I do have a history, and my children are very much a part of it. They have helped me with every campaign and have even gone as far as when they have registered to vote, they call and tell me. So now, you know, I've added 4 voters to the rolls, as well as 4 women that are interested in government and politics.
Well, now that you've got your kids are grown and out of the house, you have time to run for mayor at some point down the road, no?
It's not my thing.
Okay.
I'm a nurse. I'm a team player. I belong on the team.
Okay, can you tell us what are some of the biggest things that you think are confronting the city of Haverhill right now that maybe people aren't taking into account, but you as a local legislator have to take into account because you have to foresee these on the horizon?
Well, certainly the infrastructure of the city. I mean, we're very concerned about many of the buildings. You know, City Hall needs more work. There's going to be many schools that have issues over the next few years. We've been trying to keep ahead of that, and certainly building a new hunking is a big step forward. But I don't like to totally dismiss a lot of our older schools, like a Tilton. Yeah. But I realize to make it accommodating, a lot would have to be done. But I'd almost rather put the money into a school with that kind of a classic look rather than, say, a Whittier. And I'm not saying that Whittier isn't a great school. It's a great school. But that age of building.
It's got that Norman Rockwell sort of look to it.
It's that age of building that happened in the late 50s and the 60s that we've had so much trouble with, more so than any of our older brick ones that are throughout the city.
Isn't that interesting? So it gives credence to they don't build them like they used to.
They don't build them like they used to. And I use the old Haverhill High, which we use as City Hall, as a wonderful example. We have repurposed that building so many ways. It had a police station in it for a while, and lots of things have gone on there. We still have much of the school administration there. I wish we could do more with the auditorium there. I think it would be a great gift to the community if we could do that. So I think that's one of our things. The other thing is definitely public safety. We need to beef up our fire department equipment, and not only just the trucks, but what the men and women have to use. And notice I did say women, because before I am done as a city councilor, there will be some women on that fire department. I don't know who they are, but I'll support them. And the same thing with our police department. Our police officers are fabulous. We really, hats off to Chief Denaro and his team with the way they control things. The drug issue is immense, but we all know that. That's something that's getting so much play. But Haverhill has 5 exits off of 495. That brings an enormous amount of bad traffic. Yeah. So those are the things that I think are really important to me.
You know, when you take a look at the drug situation, how do you feel about drug testing or random drug testing?
Well, I work in a world of drug testing, so that's not, it doesn't bother me at all.
You know, if we're talking about schools?
You mean students or teachers? I think
I'm about to say both.
I think it's a difference between an employee, because I think if you take a job and that is part of the job, then that's part of the job. And it's up to, I think, whatever agencies regulate our professions, whether we should be drug tested or not. I have no problem with it.
It seems like a controversial issue. But
I don't want. It's been in my world for at least 30 years. Yeah. We can be tested.
Well, we're talking about personal privacy, and I understand that. I'm just trying to figure that in many cases, somebody goes for a job, interview or a job, if they're accepted for the position, subject to, contingent upon them going through their drug test, which almost seems like matter of fact now. But what I'm getting at is that in some cases, if we have such a big problem relative to drugs. And if people at all were focused on, and it's not just the youth, but but you want to be able to stop it from happening with youth or catch it as quickly as you can. If you were to do something of that type, somebody might say, well, if that's the case, if students are vulnerable, then wouldn't teachers be just as vulnerable as an adult outside of that profession also be vulnerable? Because it gets down to this. You ever hear the theory where somebody says if they're working for somebody or if they have subordinates, they'll say, I'll never ask somebody to do anything that I wouldn't do myself. So that being the case, it sort of like goes from the top down, and it seems to make sense to me, but how do you think that plays?
Well, I think, drug testing, I think is, I would find it more associated with what kind of profession you do. If you are dealing with the public, I think that there are sensitive materials.
Okay.
My husband works in a world where he's in the semiconductor business, and they use a lot of very volatile products. I think that, to me, drug testing, as far as the public, has to do with our jobs and our professions. I would be really reticent about putting a blanket just because there's a drug problem out there. My idea of where the drug problem is, it's all economics. Yeah. It's all about business. It's one of the, it may be the biggest business in the world right now. Yeah. So that's really what's wrong with drugs. It's so accessible, yeah. It's cheap, and I look at the type of behavior that goes with the drugs. The human being can naturally become addicted. Mm-hmm. And there's something about the power of those meds that is overwhelming. And I understand that as a nurse. I am someone who gives pain medication, and pain medication is necessary under certain circumstances. But there's a point where we have to say, you don't need this anymore. And maybe that's where we've faulted as a society, mm-hmm. that we've...
So if you don't need it anymore, they get it somewhere else.
But it's all in how you treat it. I mean, I think the first thing the doctor does after you have surgery or anything is write you a pain script. And I think maybe it should be a little bit more limited, and that there is no second bite at the apple unless there's certain symptoms. That's me. I just think that maybe we've been a little too liberal, and that we expect as a society that we should be pain-free. But sometimes pain is part of healing. So I have a different perspective.
Well, that's very profound too, but in the short time we have left, just maybe a minute or so, I'd like to ask you this question. That has to do with illegal immigration or sanctuary cities, and there's been a lot of discussion about that around the country, and somebody might wonder, well, why is that a question that we'd bring up here on a local governmental mm-hmm. level? And the reason why is because it's been my experience in my line of work. I mean, I've come across those people that happen to be, whether you want to classify them as undocumented workers or illegal aliens, that they are in fact here. Okay, now the question is, now that they're here, then how do we deal with them? And the fact is, there have been some, law enforcement is really taking it on the chin because they almost don't know what to do. Because do we hold these people if they do something wrong? What do we do? Are they supposed to be deported? What do you think?
So is there crime? Should the crime be also associated with illegal immigration? I think there are two different things going on there. That's my personal opinion. I don't think that one has anything to do with the other. And I'll tell you why I feel that way, because as a nurse,
very shortly,
I take care of the body.
Yep.
I'm not a judge and jury, so if you're a criminal,
yeah.
It has nothing to do with me. You're still a body that needs care, right. And I feel the same way about illegal immigration. Now, the problems with that have really go to the federal government. They're not our problems, but we have to force the federal government to really face the issue and do something more. We have had, about 30-something odd years of not doing the right thing, and now we have a mess on our hands. Haverhill is not going to solve it, and either is Lawrence, and I think...
But you may have to deal with it.
We have to deal with it, and I think there was a misunderstanding about what a sanctuary city is. It just means that when they're caught doing a crime, we don't ask them if they're illegal or not.
Okay.
Yeah, let's prosecute the crime, and hand them over to, if somehow that becomes part of the problem, then that has to do with the immigration regulators. It has nothing to do with us.
That'll have to be the last word. Thank you very much, Mary Ellen Daly O'Brien.
Thank you very much, Frank.
Running for re-election to the Haverhill City Council. Thanks.